There are forces of good and forces of evil at work in the world today. What are these forces? Who is responsible for the good? And who is responsible for the evil? Richard Schaff talks about current events which are rarely discussed by the mainstream media, events that affect us all. This program seeks to identify, to inform, and to equip the believer for what's ahead. Welcome to What in the World is Going On?
World is going on, and I'm your host, Richard Schaff. The program sponsored by Lincoln Log Homes. We are pro-Christian, pro-American, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and here by the grace of God. The virus 19 vaccine, yes or no? How many people do you agree with? What about those you don't agree with? Let's not be too quick to judge. You may be willing to pay a certain price for your independence. Theirs may be a greater price, or maybe they're not willing to take the same stand that you are. As conservatives, as patriots, don't let this separate us. Don't let it divide us. There's room for division here. There's nobody that's a bigger supporter of our president than I am. Yet there are things that are happening under his administration that I don't like to see happen. But I'd sure still like to see Donald Trump get a second term. A little full disclosure on me personally. I'm a bit past 85 years of age. I've had open heart surgery. I am diabetic. I've had several stent insertions. But no, I've never taken a flu shot. I've never taken a shot to keep pneumonia out of my system. You see, I don't like to put a disease intentionally into my body. No, I'm not in the medical field. I'm not that educated. But it just don't make sense to me if you don't want to have cancer that you'd put cancer in your system. Doesn't add up. So, I'm not prepared to take the coronavirus vaccine. Will I be forced into it someday? I don't know. I'm not today. I hope to God that I never am. And I can guarantee you one thing, I'll never knowingly take it from any vaccine made from the aborted fetus of one of our babies. That is where I will draw the line, and I can assure you. But the price we pay, it's going to be different for all of us. I was visiting one of my doctors the other day, and he was pointing out all of the weaknesses of the masks that we're forced to use. And then we got into the vaccine subject, and I asked him, I said, would you take it? He said, I'm going to tell you no. But if I have to be able to practice medicine to support my family, I may be forced into it. A lot of people are going to lose their job if they don't get vaccinated. You see, this is a slippery slope. Right now we're being told that we've got to wear a mask all the time. Boy, have we gotten conditioned to that. The vaccine will follow. Schools have already given up. That happened years ago. If you've got kids in public school, they had to be vaccinated. Heck, I can remember that. And I'm an old duffer. We gave up on that real easily. Today you can't fly in a plane out of the U.S. unless you wear a mask from the time you get to the airport through your entire flight. We've accepted it. I personally haven't flown. I would not, unless it was a medical emergency. I can't see myself taking it. I canceled an international vacation because you think I'm going to wear a mask all the way to Europe? For a trip? For a vacation? For fun? Nah. But I can't get in the hospital or the clinic or in to see my doctor unless I have a mask on. Isn't the vaccine just the next step? Where I live in North Carolina, you can't go into a grocery store. You can't go into any store a restaurant without putting a mask on isn't the vaccine. That little card they're going to give you, will you have to flash that to get into a grocery store? To get into a doctor's office to get treated at the local hospital? I wonder what it'll have on it. You don't think it could be 666, do you? Oh, there, I'm going off on a tangent. Can't do that. The cardiologist that I've been seeing for 20 years was taken over by a hospital. It was taken over by another board of directors. Yeah, right here in North Carolina. He was told how many people can work in his office, who has to work from home. He wanted me to talk to him on the phone to have my heart checked. Well, I found another cardiologist in a different setting. Inconvenient, yeah. But people that have something at stake that may not be what you and I have at stake, let's not judge them too hard. It's an individual thing. We have individual convictions, I'm sure. And let's not lose our friendship and our fellow patriots over this matter. The left would love to have it. But I'll tell you one area that I am going to, and I mentioned this briefly already, look at very closely. Which COVID-19 vaccines will be derived from aborted children's cell lines? There are now more than 120 COVID-19 vaccine candidates in development, and this article came to me back on June 11th of this year. I can tell you, navigating the ethics of using them is going to be a challenge. The race is on to find the vaccine for COVID-19. We got a couple of them already. As I said, this article was back on June 11th, 2020. They point out that the good news is that many of the world's largest vaccine companies are developing these promising candidates using ethically derived cells. The bad news is that many of the leading vaccine candidates for the 2019 novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 are being developed using fetal cell lines. These were originally derived from the cells of aborted babies back in the 70s and 80s. Of course, our church failed that test back then, didn't they, on the abortion issue? But then that's another subject for another time. Pharmaceutical companies are now spring to have a vaccine ready by the end of the year, early 21, and I'm bringing this to you in December of 20, and we've already got a couple. And our president made arrangements to get them out pretty fast, didn't he? According to a tracker from the World Health Organization, there are now more than 120 vaccine candidates in development. Of these 10 vaccine candidates that have already advanced to clinical tests to test the vaccine. Several more candidates are expected to begin these clinical tests before the end of the year, and we see them in the system even now. But some of them have fetal cells being used. Several vaccine frontrunners, including those that are being developed, Moderna, it's one of them we got. AstraZeneca, CanSino Biologics, Beijing Institute of Biotechnology are among a few that are being used that use human fetal kidney cells. That line called HEK293, they've used that to develop the trial vaccines. What is that, HEK219? Well, that was originally derived from the kidney tissue from a baby girl who was aborted in the Netherlands in 1972 and later developed into a cell line in a lab in 1973. Additionally, Janssen, the pharmaceutical division of consumer product giant Johnson & Johnson, is using the fetal cell line from PERC6 to develop its vaccine. That fetal cell line was derived from the retinal tissue taken from an 18-week-old baby boy who was aborted in the Netherlands in 1985 and later converted into a fetal cell line in 1995. The U.S. government, this is under our good president, who I greatly admire, but the U.S. government has already made grants totaling nearly $2 billion in support of the development of COVID-19 vaccines using fetal cell lines. Wow. BARDA was awarded a $1.2 billion grant for AstraZeneca to fund research for the trial vaccine it jointly developed with Oxford University. Bartford has also been made grants for up to $483 million for Moderna's vaccine and $456 million for Janssen research and development. Moderna is also seeking substantial research assistance for its COVID-19 vaccine from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. This was the one that helped develop the vaccine and conduct clinical trials. That group, NAVID, is a division of the National Institute of Health led by well-known Dr. Anthony Fauci. More on him at another time. We could take a whole program. Another vaccine candidate to be developed by Merck through Themis is a biotech company recently acquired by Merck, and they're seeking to use the live measles vaccine as a viral vector. Merck's measles vaccine is produced using chicken egg. The vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella, that's MMR, that's manufactured using human fetal cells. Their line WI-38, which was derived from the lung cells of an aborted baby. And we've already accepted it to a large degree. Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, these are right now in the market, on the edge, the latest to be used. Johnson & Johnson, this and the Trump administration, $2 billion in support of vaccines using fetal cell lines. Yeah, under our president. $1.2 billion for AstraZeneca, $483 million for Moderna, $456 million for Johnson & Johnson. We're going to have to draw a line someplace, folks. So be ready. But in the meantime, let's not judge too quick those that we disagree with. Because you see, I don't have to worry about proving that I've been vaccinated because of a job. I'm self-employed. Well, I guess I could. I get a Social Security check. Maybe I'm going to have to show that. I don't have to go into the grocery store. I have someone do it for me. But that someone is my wife. What if she suddenly decides that she doesn't want to do it? Am I going to make her do it? As I mentioned earlier, they've got me on the mask. I don't fly anymore. Used to fly quite often. But it was for pleasure. And to me, wearing a mask isn't a pleasure. But putting the cells of a disease into my body isn't something I'm willing to do either. A pro-life group has called attention to some of the ethical issues surrounding the vaccines and the coronavirus vaccine in particular, especially when it comes to the vaccines being made using the cells of aborted babies. And now they're noting the possibility of mandatory vaccination. Who is the group? It's the Personhood Alliance. They issued 10 key points outlining the group's official position on the ethics of vaccines. They're based on the principle of, quote, the rights of born persons not to be forced to violate their own bodily integrity and or moral conscience, and the rights of preborn persons not to be trafficked, not to be experimented with without their consent. Many of the big pharma companies that made vaccine use cells from aborted babies to produce them. Well, that's considered unethical by the Alliance. I'd agree with them. Would you? They added that Christians should be demanding that pharmaceutical companies put a stop to the commodification and trafficking of humans at all stages of life and avoid practices that perpetuate and encourage the relationship between abortion, biomedical science, and human trafficking, no matter when that connection was initiated or how long a practice has been socially accepted. I see where down in Tyler, Texas, Bishop Joseph Strickland had made vocal comments about the topic. In April, he tweeted that if the only way to get a vaccine for this virus viruses by using the body parts of aborted children, he will refuse it. He said, and I quote him, "I will not kill children to live." Archbishop Carlo Vigano and a group of other cardinals issued a public letter in May reminding Catholics that it is morally unacceptable to use a vaccine that's derived from aborted fetuses. They added that people should be given the chance to refuse these vaccines without facing any penalties. It was signed by 22 priests, as well as journalists, lawyers, doctors, and academics. It's already collected more than 57,000 signatures. But I just saw today where the Pope said, if that's the only way to get the vaccine, it's okay. I have paraphrased his exact quote. But I was horrified to read it today on the 22nd of December. Vaccine mandates are unethical and intrusive. Their document also addresses the topic of mandatory vaccines, calling such policies unethical and intrusive. They said, and I quote, that people's rights to refuse medical treatment on religious, health, or moral grounds should be preserved and protected by law, and that this should extend to decisions about vaccination. They added that forcing vaccinations on people is a violation of their biblical personhood. There was a bishop over in Europe that had some harsh words for the practice, calling mandatory vaccine in an interview, quote, the last step of Satanism. And here's what I just mentioned to you that I saw today. Pope Francis, meanwhile, recently called for vaccinations to be universal and for all. What a disgrace. In May, President Trump confirmed that coronavirus vaccines will not be forced on people who don't want them at the federal level, acknowledging that not everyone will be willing to subject their bodies to these shots. However, individual governments could still require mandatory COVID vaccines at the state level. And I want to ask you something here, folks. What do you think Joe Biden's administration is going to do on that subject? They believe in killing the baby that's already been delivered in an attempt to abort it. Of course, they make it comfortable while it lies there dying. That's the Democrat position. I ask you folks, where are you going to stand? But my topic is, let's not be too hard on some of these people that don't have the same stand we do because they're fellow patriots. Let's pray for them and show them some scripture. Show them some of the material that I'm sharing with you. But you know, the price that they're being asked to pay, again, may not be the same as ours. And you know, watch what's happening in other countries, because what happens in other countries oftentimes spreads around the world. Had a report came out on December 16th when the elderly and frail die after receiving the COVID vaccine. One of the first groups they want to have it are people that are old and frail in nursing homes. Even CNN came out with this one, and it's quite a story. Why vaccinate our most frail? The vote to recommend long care residents be among the first to receive the COVID-19 vaccinations was not unanimous, but it was sure out there. Out of a panel of 14 CDC vaccine advisors, one lone doctor stood out and voted no. The COVID vaccines have not even been tested in the frail elderly, many of whom are residents of these long care facilities. They're listed as one of the first groups to get the vaccine offered to them. Oh, here. We just covered this, but I have an article here from Nick Perry. Came out on November 24th of this year. International flyers may soon need to get the virus vaccinations. International air travel, that boom might be coming back, he noted, next year. But with a new rule, travelers to certain countries would have to be vaccinated against the virus before they can even fly. Well, you got to put a mask on even to get in the airport today for all of the airlines in the U.S. Can it happen to vaccines? They're already conditioning us. It's people control. It's Bill Gates. It's population control. Do you see the slippery slope? From New Zealand, international air travel could be booming back. But travelers to certain countries are going to have to be vaccinated against the virus before they can fly. I wonder, would there be any countries you don't have to vaccinate to fly into? AstraZeneca COVID vaccine is only 70% effective. Well, maybe, perhaps after all of the hiccups from the trials, rumors of seriously ill trial subjects, a month-long trial halt in the U.S., investors had set a bar a little higher for this particularly vaccination substance. The stock tumbled after the news that there were so many hurt from it, because so many got sick from it. They're still using it. Things are about to get much worse, folks. The vaccine Nazis would have made Hitler proud of. Came to me from All News Pipeline. They note, Americans better unite now in the name of freedom, or lose it forever. Take a look at what's coming to America. Take a look up in Canada, where the threats against their citizens that refuse the virus is happening right now. Ontario's chief medical officer says that those who refuse to take the COVID vaccine won't have freedom to move around, and they're going to have to continue to wear masks anyway. Dr. David Williams says, and I'm quoting, "It would make some of the mandatory vaccination recommendations mandatory. No other way." He acknowledged that we can't force someone to take a vaccine, but he went on to explain how people who don't take it would have their freedom of mobility severely restricted. Like you can't get in your doctor's office. You can't get in your job. You can't get in the hospital. You don't have to take it. You can lay down on the streets and starve. We wouldn't force you to take it. Do you see the slippery slope? Do you see this, where this is heading? So for those that may not be as well as informed as you and I, or who may have a different standard, let's not be too quick to judge them. Let's pray for them and educate them. And many of them are as good a patriot as you or me. Why people don't trust the Pfizer COVID vaccine? Why do people believe in conspiracy theories? Well, Michael Shermer, a famous skeptic, was forced to admit that one of the reasons is that some of them are true. In his research, he found that the fact that some conspiracy theories are real people and their suspicion and makes them susceptible to the belief in others that are far less credible. Drugs save lives, but drugs are also dangerous. Remember that, folks. History shows it. Autism shows it and proves it, doesn't it? Renowned scientist tells Laura Ingraham, we all know Laura Ingraham from Fox News, he told her that the COVID-19 vaccine is downright dangerous and will send you to your doom. That's right, on a recent program of the Ingraham Angle on Fox News. A mind-boggling live interview with a world-renowned microbiologist who said the looming COVID-19 vaccine is downright dangerous and will send you to your doom, and that's a quote. The expert, Chirag Bhakdi, a doctor, spoke on Skype, the video link from his home over in Germany. He's also the co-author of Corona, False Alarm. That's a massive bestseller in Germany that was published in English here on October 2nd. Incidentally, the book is currently the #1 bestseller in the Amazon category as a microbiology and pulmonary medicine and health law. It has a 4.8 out of 5 rating. In response to Ingraham's question on why these methods, including masks and social distancing, are being pushed, the doctor noted, "This is something that we, and when I say we, hundreds and thousands of people are standing up to say, please, all of you, sit down and think about this. Read about this, and then make up your own mind. Don't believe things that people are telling you? Think for yourself and come to your own conclusions. That's why we wrote this book, because of all of the arguments telling you why and what you are doing is absolutely nonsense. That was a professional. Wow. In his interview with Ingram, the good doctor described as utter nonsense Dr. Anthony Fauci's claim earlier during a live interview on The Story with Martha MacCallum, a same Fox channel, that 75% of Americans would need to be vaccinated against the virus in order to achieve herd immunity. The doctor added, quote, someone who says this doesn't have the slightest chance or the slightest inkling of the basic of immunology, end quote. In response to Ingram's final question, so you think the COVID-19 vaccine is unnecessary? He replied, quote, I think it's downright dangerous. And I warn you, if you go along these lines, you're going to go down to your own doom. Wow. Hey, that was an educated man, professional in the medical field. Those are his words. So in closing, where do I stand? I think I've made it pretty clear. Where do you stand? You probably have a pretty good idea yourself. But my point to both you and me, let's not damn those that we are not in complete agreement with or are not in complete agreement with us. Let's educate, pray, stick with our fellow patriots. Let's remember, he may lose a job. He may lose the care of his doctor. He may give his life if he takes a stand that you and I are prepared to take. Some are negotiable. Some we can give and take on. Some individually we will not take any waverance of, such as using the cells of a murdered baby. God bless until our next broadcast, and remember, this program is brought to you by Lincoln Log Homes of North Carolina.